In Las Vegas on the Internet. How are you, sir? I understand you're a pilot.
Yes, sir. I'm a professional pilot, first-time caller, long-time listener, and thank you for bringing constitutional and conservative sanity and truth to Ameritopia, my friend.
Ha ha, you're a reader, too. Thank you, sir.
No problem. I just want everybody to know that I am a professional pilot, and I was working last night. I was doing a flight from Chicago to Las Vegas. And as we approached what we crews call the front range, it's basically coming up on Colorado Springs, Denver, I started hearing Los Angeles approach telling all the airliners to either slow down because of holding. Now, I've got a plethora of weather information in front of me, and I also have a plethora of what are called notices to airmen about runway conditions and airport conditions. And even though the weather was moving in on the coast of Los Angeles, LAX, if you don't know, is a gigantic airport and capable of handling a lot of traffic during down weather. So that's really a non-issue. Coming into Las Vegas, as I like to say, it was clear in a million, meaning there was no weather in between me and Vegas. In fact, when I was 200 miles east of Vegas, I could see Vegas from, 40,000 feet. So I'm hearing these controllers saying, well, you have to slow down because we're starting to hold. And the crews are asking, well, why do we have to hold? There's no weather. What's the problem? And I counted. On my little notepad, I made little tallies. 25 controllers came back and said, we're understaffed, we're understaffed, we're understaffed. They kept repeating it like you're one of the pull dolls, we're understaffed. And finally, we're all required to carry a certain amount of fuel in case we have to do a go-around or emergency or we got to go to an alternate. But finally, all the crews picked up on this, and they were like, well, if you're going to hold us for a long time for no apparent reason, we can get in because of the weather. At Las Vegas, there was no runway closures or anything. There wasn't even any weather. And in Los Angeles, there was a little bit of weather, but they can handle it. So they said, you have to give us a reason, or else we're going to have to divert us because of fuel. And once all these pilots started saying, you're going to have to start to veer, their tone started changing. Now, let me tell you, because of the technology, first and foremost, because of the professionalism of the crews and the technology available to us in these aircraft, it takes fewer air traffic controllers to handle air traffic today than it did, let's say, back in the 80s. Mm-hmm. So, and your point about they're handling less traffic, it goes beyond that. The technology allows for better efficiency, and by FAA regulations, if you file a flight plan and you tell the FAA that you have this certain equipment in your airplane, then, and you accept an arrival into an airport, you have to comply with that arrival. That actually takes the responsibility of heading an altitude away from the controller, and it places it on
all right.
the crew.
Let me ask you this. So all you pilots, you're starting to tell them at the tower, hey, look, we got to land or you got to divert us. What happened?
Yeah, exactly. Because the weather was fine to get into L.A.
I know, but what did they do? Did they just start landing you one after another?
Well, they started pausing, and they're saying, well, we'll get back to you. I got to figure out from my supervisor what's going on. And they would say that, I'll get back to you. I'll get back to you. And finally they come back and say, okay, we freed up a little bit, but we're still understaffed, but we're going to try and do the best we can do. Now, I've been into L.A. 100 times. I'm based out of Vegas. I've been to major airports. I just came out of Chicago. When things are moving and they're not having this little hubbub, this tizzy, in my opinion, I personally think it's the unions having this tizzy in Washington, D.C., pulling their strings. But when they're not...
All right, pilot, Jason, who's a pilot, commercial pilot, don't hang up. I want to close the circle on this. We'll be right back to Jason, the pilot. I'm getting emails, sir, saying, land the plane. What happened?
Okay, well, my point, Mark, not going into detail, is this doesn't need to happen. This great United States of America...
Well, let me ask you this. So you're up there, and you're saying, okay, we need to land, and did they finally... Did you land, or did you have to land at another airport?
No, we did land at our destination, and a lot of the airplanes ended up landing at their destinations. A few did have to hold, and they did slow everybody down but there was no reason for it.
This is a work slowdown or a work stoppage, and I believe this. And the administration is working with the unions, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you could tell. I mean, when the air traffic controller would say, "I've got to get back to you on what's the delay," there would even said, "I've got to get to my supervisor." It is that. They've been told to slow things down, and they don't need to, because our great aviation system is far superior and can handle. It can handle so much, and there's no need for any of this.
All right, my friend. Well, thank you for your explanation. We appreciate it. No, there isn't. And the numbers don't add up. Like I said, a top economist at George Mason University has looked at all this and says there's no budgeting data that supports this, period. And so, the nation has gone through a lot now. The nation had a hell of a week last week, particularly in Boston and particularly in Texas. But the nation emotionally, psychologically, goes through this. We are Americans. We do stand shoulder to shoulder when the government steps out of the way and the politicians aren't trying to balkanize us. So on top of this, here comes Monday, and what does Obama do with his union buddies at the FAA? They do this. They do this. And he doesn't give a crap about it. Man shows no leadership. None. Let me put it to you this. Do you think Ronald Reagan would put up with this? Let me tell you something, folks. The federal government shut down, I think it was 3 times under Ronald Reagan. They never shut down the airports. Never. When Newt Gingrich was holding the line with Bill Clinton, the government shut down for about 3 weeks. They never shut down the airports. I mean, our air traffic system is essential. There's so much other crap the federal government does. This is what I'm talking about. If you listen to this program, we've talked about these government reports, the GAO and others, talking about $125 billion a year could be saved just by streamlining. One report said $500 billion a year by getting rid of duplicative programs and fraud and so forth. Obama does none of these things. Instead, it's aimed at punishing you. And I'm going to tell you why. Because in his class warfare, Marxist thinking kind of mentality, he figures the people who can afford to fly are wealthier than most of the people who can't. It's class warfare. He doesn't give a crap. It's like health care. The real purpose of health care is redistributing wealth. And so that's what they're doing.